I don't know if we have a moderator.
No, I don't think we do. I think we're gonna be self-moderated.
Yeah. Autopilot.
Yeah.
Are you recording this for you or for them?
Just for me.
Just for you.
Unless you want me to post it up. I can post it up on my page.
I can send it to you also. I got your email address. Remember, I just emailed you a few days ago. What time is it? Is it up to 10:30? 12:30. I mean 12:30. What's saying? No,
Just switch it on.
sweet.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
We are recording.
Very
Yeah,
nice.
it's 12:30, huh?
Okay.
It's about, yeah.
Somebody take us out.
What are you doing?
Take us out?
Oh, David started.
Yes.
Okay. I'm happy to start. Can everybody hear me or shall I use this microphone?
Good hear you.
We're good.
Good, all right. So, we're up here, we don't have a title to our presentation.
Well, we did.
What did it say?
In case it's gold to Poseidon.
From Casey's Gold to
Oh, I'm
Poseidon.
sorry, from Pitfall to Poseidon.
Pitfall to Poseidon.
Right.
Oh well, everybody knows why we're here.
In fact, we've talked to all these people. Every person here has come to our booth and we've talked to them.
So we're done, right?
So I think. Thanks for coming.
Show of hands, who's wearing an Atari shirt?
And there's probably some of you have been at one of our presentations at a previous show, so if you want to come up and just repeat whatever we said.
Has anybody seen us talk before the show?
No, okay.
Wow.
Gary, you had an
Because this is the first time y'all been here.
That's right.
That's true.
You had an interesting take since this is a coin-op arcade expo.
Yeah, it was actually David's take.
David's take.
So sometimes what we do is talk about how we got started in the business, because it's all different. And then we talk about the old days at Activision, and then we get up to where we are present day, how insanely crazy it is that we're doing games now. But Dave had a thought that's, if there's a lot of interest about arcade, because it's more of an arcade show, should we spend some time talking about arcade ports that we've been involved with, taking arcade games and putting them onto the new platforms, onto the old platforms, I'm sorry. Is that of interest to anybody, or we want to just focus more on what our career has been outside of our specific arcade ports?
Show of hands, interested in our arcade ports that we've
I'm
done?
interested in whatever you guys want to talk about.
Yeah. Or do both.
Show of hands, how our dinner was last evening. Where did we go, Gary?
We haven't worked on any controversial arcade ports,
No.
with the exception of that one I did with that guy running and jumping over the barrels on the slanted ramp.
Oh, yeah, that's a little controversial.
That does bring a little controversy up. So maybe we should go away from that and talk. Actually, I'm well versed on discussing that subject.
Yeah, so kind of hybrid of all that, a little bit of background. I started at Atari 1977, working with Nolan Bushnell. And by 1979 had spun off and founded Activision. Garry came into Activision 1980, right?
Yep.
And Dan shortly thereafter, or with him, kind of in the same group.
Yeah.
But the Atari 2600 was created by Atari so that they could bring their arcade hits into the home. You know, the video game business really started in the arcades. Technically, you start with Magnavox Odyssey, Pong was even before that. But to do really sophisticated games, it was done in the arcades. And many of you have been inside these arcade machines. They've got, 150 discrete integrated circuits. They've got thousands of capacitors that you've probably all changed out many times. So they're much more complicated. They're like $3,000 pieces of hardware. And so, but Atari had all these hits from the arcade. And they said, if we could sell these into the home, we could sell millions of them instead of just one to every arcade. So they created the Atari 2600, which was one of the first cartridge programmable video game systems. So the system was in the house, and you would sell new cartridges. Every time you sold a new cartridge, you were selling a new game to these people. But when I started at Atari in 1977, the focus was, we've got all these arcade hits. Don't give me any original crap. Let's take the arcade hits and put them into the home as home versions. So my first game was Outlaw. It wasn't an arcade, or wasn't an Atari arcade game. I basically kind of duplicated Midway's Gunslinger, I think it was. It was Midway, right? Anybody know? Gunslinger, which was two guys shooting at each other through cactus and things. And then one of my next projects was Canyon Bomber, because Atari had Canyon Bomber and they had Depth Charge, two arcade games. And I managed to put in a 2K byte Atari cartridge two of their $3,000 arcade machines, Canyon Bomber and Depth Charge. I think I was very proud at having done that. But over the years, people always say, where do your ideas come from? And occasionally we will look at an arcade game that we really like and either be hired to create a home version of it or be inspired by it. So before we, let's do a couple of the arcade
So
games that we did.
you skipped the third one, which is just outright copy it.
Well, there's that.
Yeah. But that one goes without saying.
We don't have Steve Cartwright here. Sometimes he's joined us for some of these talks, but he did Mega Mania, which is one of the real fun Atari 2600 games that Activision put out, and it was a direct rip-off of Astro Blaster? Astro Blaster, which was an arcade game.
Mattel? Or
Yeah.
no, it wasn't Mattel.
It wasn't a ripoff, it was an homage.
An
An homage.
That's right.
Correct.
And it was a hilarious side story is, at some point, the creator of Astro Blaster, the arcade game, came to Activision and applied for a job to become a video game programmer in the home side.
Ah,
And we sent Steve in to be part of the interview. And he was just, the whole time he was thinking, this guy was going to say, "You ripped off my game, damn it!" And he never said a thing.
He wanted a job.
I don't know why he never got hired either. I
Wow.
don't know what happened there, but anyway, so yeah, we can rip them off. I mean, we can create a homage.
So let's list some of the ones we've done, and if you hear any that you really want to hear about, then just yell out. Dan has done a few. Dan did Kung Fu Master, Double Dragon,
Double Dragon, Atari Warriors,
Nice.
Commando,
yeah,
Crossbow,
yeah.
maybe it.
We tried to talk them in the building and Crossbow and putting it in the box, but
Yeah.
it was too much.
Well, Dragster was a complete rip-off of Drag Race.
That's
Atari's
true.
Drag
You're right.
Race game.
Drag Race Arcade.
I guess I only
And
did
that was
one.
my first Activision game. And we had just spun off of Atari, and nobody ever...
Well,
Complained about
Avalanche,
that.
we didn't do it, but Kaboom was Avalanche.
Kaboom
Kaboom
was
was Avalanche.
Avalanche,
Larry
right?
Kaplan
right.
just loved the Avalanche game, and he created Kaboom, and it's still, to this day, the greatest Twitch game ever made.
Yeah.
It's just, you get in such a zone trying to play those things at high speed.
Chopper Command tends to be associated with Defender.
Yeah, but now you're really.
I don't think it is.
I don't think it is. No. I mean, that's like saying Space Jockey is Defender. It's not.
Right.
But just because it's horizontal scrolling. So, I mean, I would stick closer to the, clearly derivative.
And we would go in the 80s, we would go into New York City, because we lived out there, Dave was in California. We'd go to the arcades Times Square and look around at the new machines for ideas, for, incentive, thoughts. and-
Inspiration.
Inspiration.
Yep.
That was one of the best arcades that Hughes won in Times Square.
What's
Yeah,
that?
Times
The
Square.
one in
Times Square,
yeah, that
yep.
thing was huge.
Yeah, yeah. So, and then I did Donkey Kong. I think that was the only one I did. Dave, I remember a great story you told me about Canyon Bomber.
Canyon Bomber.
Canyon Bomber, when I was a youngster, before I got into making the games, Canyon Bomber was one of my favorite cartridges. It was really
So
excellent.
who's played Canyon Bomber the arcade? Enough people? A few people?
Was it called that in the arcade?
It was called Canyon Bomber. It was
Okay.
a separate, there were, Canyon Bomber and Depth Charge were two different
Ah,
arcades.
yes, Depth Charge.
I just happened to put them both in the same Atari.
Right,
arcade.
right.
So in Canyon Bomber, it's a two-player game. You've got jet planes flying and dropping bombs, and you're in a canyon, and there's these little round scoreable points, and each time your bomb hits the points, you earn them, and it's really fun. Sometimes you will take them right before the other guy's bomb is about to hit them, and you'll steal those points from him. And then if you undercut one of those score balls, it would drop with gravity and fill in, so they would all be kind of collapsing,
Kind of a reverse, an upside down breakout.
but falling with gravity like that.
Yes.
So when I did the Atari 2600 version, they made us do this. I mean, I apologize, but if you look at these Atari games, they all say 36 game variations, and one of them had 1,024 game variations. Or something like
144 game variations. So,
So-
Space Invaders.
So
Yeah,
before
well.
I could release it, they said, all right, what are your game variations, right? So I created a game variation in Canyon Bomber that turns off the gravity code, so that if you undercut a block that's worth points, instead of falling to the lower level, it would stay up there. Now I have to tell you that this is one of the first games I'd ever done, and I was classically trained with math, and to make these blocks fall, I sat down with a piece of paper and my gravity calculations in 32 feet per second squared, and I was
Squared.
doing all these calculations to figure out how to make these things fall. And on the 2600 with limited ROM and limited RAM, I couldn't do any of that stuff. And so a day later, I had reduced the whole thing down to like 5 instructions in the microprocessor,
Right.
which was a mask and an exclusive OR, and the things would look like they were falling.
And Super Breakout, I think, had that same feature, didn't it?
No,
It didn't?
I don't think.
No.
I remember playing a Breakout game where you would either go through them and they would stay there, or you would go through them and they fall. Am I wrong?
Yeah.
Was there a
Canyon
Breakout?
Bomber, I
Maybe it
think,
was
really-
Arkanoid, maybe?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't know.
All right, whatever.
Or you're remembering Candy Bomb. But
Or-
anyway,
Canyon Bomber,
so
which in the arcade was black and white.
I put a great deal of effort into making those blocks fall. I mean, remember, this is a video game, and what's on the screen, even though it looks like reality, is not reality. It is not reality until we write a piece of code that says, move that to there, from here to there. And I put a lot of effort into that. But at the end of the project, game's ready to go, and they said, all right, the gals who are going to be writing the manual are going to come, and I want you to explain the game to them so that they can figure out how to tell people how to play it. And they come over, and I said, you drop the bombs, and you see how they fall, and they do this, and when they fall, they become different colors, and different colors are different points, and all the things that go into a video game. And then I said, and then of course you have to explain all these different game variations. And I switch up to game variation 16 or whatever it is, and I drop a bomb, and the bomb goes through, and it leaves the holes. You know, they don't fall. I hear an audible gasp behind me, and the girl turns to me, how did you make them stay up like that?
She thought it was reality.
Defying gravity.
I guess I had convinced her that there was actual gravity making those things fall, because she thought I was writing code to make them stay up instead of all the effort I made to
Hit the
make
side
them
of the TV, they'll fall.
Yeah.
Yes, that would have been good.
Tilt.
I like that.
Yeah.
I like
So,
that.
That's the story Gary was alluding to.
Yes. So Kung Fu Master
Kung Fu Master.
has been, I've seen it praised a lot as one of the best ports, with people constantly saying, I think it's better than the NES version.
The NES one was really good.
It was.
I had it on my desk when
but
I
it was
did that one.
pretty damn close.
However, I was very unhappy I didn't have 2 buttons, so I didn't like pushing up to jump. I thought that was kludgy. It was the only option I had. I did put a lot in there. The entire NES game is in there, which also is what's in the arcade. I wrote the code. My brother Garry did all the wonderful animation of the big karate guy. So on the Atari, we only have 2 players, and one of the players, you can, every scan line, you can duplicate them or magnify them in different sizes, and then shift them off to the side of what the line above is. And Garry had to use a tool that we created to be able to do those wonderful images of him being stretched out and kicked.
I don't think we created it, so I think we did it by hand.
No, I made a tool for you.
You did make a makeshift?
I made a makeshift tool, and you went and you created
Wow.
all these frames, because I had no clue. I'm not an artist. He's the artist in the family. How I could come make these. I knew how I could do it. I didn't know how I could draw them. So Garry created all the wonderful animations for the main character. And that game came out quite well. I was very happy with it.
It's a good example of having to do an arcade game that has defined a gameplay with a machine that has no business being able to do that gameplay. The problem is the Atari is generally about putting 8-bit objects up on the screen.
2 of them.
Two of them.
2 tanks shooting at each other with 1-bit missiles.
Right, and think about 8 bits, those tanks are pretty small in combat. So now you have this thing where you have a character and he kicks out with his leg and it's far wider than 8 bits. And you'll see bad fighting games on the Atari. You know, they kick the leg out, and from the length of the end of the leg to the back of the guy is 8 bits.
Yeah.
So it's this little, you don't even see it. So we figured out how to do it, so it gave you much greater depth, and that really made the big difference. It looked like the guy was actually kicking, and that was good. And that's really the history of making arcade games on a 2600, is if we're thinking of an idea, we're thinking of it with the hardware in mind. I was explaining to someone this morning that many times, at least for me, a concept would be driven by what's an object that I found I could make on a 2600, which looked good, incredible.
Yeah, all of us do that.
Like the escalator. I did the escalator before I knew the game, because I just thought an escalator would be cool, and I did the escalator. And then when it was done, I said, all right, now I need a game idea that takes place somewhere where there's an escalator.
Escalators and Keystone Capers, by the way.
And they're in Keystone Capers.
Now, you can go to that one that David brought up today, that the original Keystone Capers was more like Crazy Climber.
The original Keystone Capers was climbing the side of a building. And the guy was going up the floors, and he would take stuff and throw them out the windows of the department store, and you would dodge them.
Inspired maybe by Crazy.
Inspired.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was. Yeah, it was really
Didn't
more
really look-
inspired by the fact that I had just done Donkey Kong,
Right.
and in my brain I had going up a building as, you know, a way to do something. And then Dave came out, probably the first time we had a
First time.
business meeting with him after we joined the company. He came out to our offices in New Jersey, beautiful Glen Rock, New Jersey, next to the Nabisco factory, where you could smell the Oreos. And he said, well, why don't you make it horizontal like this game I'm working on called Jungle Runner? He said, that would work. And I did. Christ knows I wasn't going to argue with him at that point. It was about 3 days into the job. Yes, sir. So I did that, and it came out very well. Gave me an opportunity to use my escalator. So, but when you approach it from the standpoint of it, have an object that looks great, I'm going to make a game, well, you're making life easy for yourself. The opposite is, here's a game, it has a giant gorilla in it that looks like King Kong, and you have to put him in. a game that the object is 8 bits wide. That's when you get into a lot of trouble. Or here's an arcade game with all these ghosts running around and being chased anywhere in a maze, and and that's the problem with arcade games. They're decided before they know what hardware they're running on, and you have the task of putting them on the Atari, and that can 99 times out of 100 be a disaster.
And the guys who are making the arcade games, they run out of sprites, and they go back to the engineer and say, "Can you give me another sprite board? Put a daughter board on there so I got some extra sprites or whatever." They change the hardware as needed.
Yeah.
The hardware was at Grandma's house already. We couldn't change the hardware.
No.
Okay.
So that's why it's so hard. I mean, the other thing that makes arcade ports hard is, making development on the Atari hard in general was schedules. In the reality of the video game business, even today, you've got the people that understand how to make the games, the people that have the technical know how to make the games, the people that know how to make games fun. But then you have decisions being made by people in suits that don't know any of those things. And they tell you it's got to be done by October 2nd in time to get into the stores by Black Friday. And then you're basically taking a potentially very good game and turning it into a piece of poop because you've put an artificial deadline on it.
Because sometimes it's the tweaking that makes the game great.
Right.
Oh, God,
And you
yeah.
don't know when it's done.
Right.
You don't know when that tweaking
Playing
is
it for
done.
months.
Yeah, the way I've explained it to people in the past. Siri?
Siri, I don't know what she said.
She interrupts more lately. She's getting arrogant.
Siri, stop.
The way I've explained it to people is, if I'm writing an accounting software, piece of accounting software,
Get fed with that dinner. Oh,
they'll give you a list of 75 things that need to be in the game. Be in the project. It's got to balance this, it's got to do this, got to generate reports, profit margin, blah, blah, blah. And you do them all, you check them off, and you're done. And you hand it to your boss and you're finished. And you know you're finished because you achieved everything on the list. Video games don't work like that. Yes, you put together a list. Yes, you write a 200-page manual. Yes, it tells how everything's going to work exactly. But anybody who's done it before knows that that is just to satisfy the bosses. The fact of the matter is that when it's not done, when that list is done, it's done when it's fun.
right.
And you may get to the list being done and everything checked off,
And it has to go out.
and it ain't fun.
Yes.
So what do? Keep working on it until it's fun, or ship it knowing it's a piece of crap?
Yeah,
Yeah,
it's happened many times.
it's happened many
And if
times.
it's not scheduled, it's, back then it was ROM space.
Yeah, ROM space was
I know I
tough too.
did Crossbow, and I think I may have left one or two of the arcade screens out, because I frankly didn't have any more room
Yeah,
in the cartridge. to put.
yep. So, in answer to all the naysayers who said that I was
Here it comes.
instructed by
Here it
Coleco to tank the Atari version so they'd sell more Coleco versions.
Is everybody aware of this?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, this is common knowledge.
Common knowledge that the Donkey Kong on the Atari 2600 was made less good because Coleco had their own version on the ColecoVision, and they wanted it to sell better than the 2600. So they
Right.
told the developer to make it suck.
I remember that meeting.
Yeah?
Not.
This is up there with, we didn't go to the moon and the earth is flat.
Right.
Okay? The earth is round, and we went there 6
Wait.
times.
And there are two things that completely debunk. Well, number one, it never happened. Number two, they gave me 90 days to do it. 4K was generally the standard ROM size at that point. And there was an immovable date because of Christmas. And they didn't license the deal with Nintendo until, I don't know, May, whatever, or March, and it had to be done in end of May. So there was absolutely, they had no motivation to give me instructions to do anything except give them a saleable product by the date. if they told me you can have an 8K ROM, it wouldn't have changed a thing. Wouldn't have changed one thing because they didn't have time. They have time. I mean, I filled in the 4K with 90 days with no sleep the last 3 of them. There was, yeah, you want to talk about 2 more screens? Great. Well, I need another 3 months. Well, you know that wasn't going to happen.
Right.
Because they already knew every unit was manufactured was going to sell. Every unit. And they did $100 million in sales in like 2 months. They sold every unit they manufactured, and they didn't give a squat whether the game was great or not, as long as every unit would sell.
Right.
So they had no motivation to
They,
torpedo the
they weren't gamers. They just wanted to make
Yeah.
money.
This was the
Greenbergs, right?
Greenberg brothers. Yes, and I literally met them. They came. Well, they called me the week before the code release and said, "We want you to come up to Hartford."
Was it only a week you were up there?
Yeah, it was a week, maybe 2
I
weeks.
thought it was like.
Yeah, maybe 2 weeks. Come up to Hartford, work in our offices. Want to stand over you and breathe on you. And that's what I did. I sat there and I worked in their offices in a cubicle for the last 2 weeks. And the Greenberg brothers, twice a day, would come in and go, "How's it going?" "Well, it's going the same as it was 5 hours ago. Where are you going?" "I mean, how's it going?" So I finished it, and you know that it wasn't tanked because the annual report the following year came out for Coleco that year. Coleco had 550 what we call SKUs, 550 individual stock items that are sold in Toys R Us and Walmart and Target. And out of their 550 stock units, that cartridge, one stock unit, did 25% of the corporation's total revenue. So they would have been nuts to play with that. They wanted every dollar they could get, and that single product generated 25% of the entire company's revenue. So no, it's a lie, and anybody that tells you online otherwise, that know what they're talking
Yeah,
about.
at that point, I really firmly believe there were 5 people in the world who could have done that game that good at that time. It was Garry and the 4 guys at Activision. I couldn't do that game at that point. I wasn't skilled enough. And out of those 5 people, there's no way that they wanted anybody to make anything lousy for Garry. And they just wanted to get it done, and he was able to get it done wonderfully.
Well, in fact, Activision made the game better.
They
It
did. Activision improved
did make
that
the
game.
better. Funny story,
Even
Garry.
before he was working for Activision.
That's true. Activision influenced Donkey Kong 2600, Garry.
So I called Activision when I was maybe halfway through the game. Because when you're a contractor and you're paying your mortgage with money you're making from contracting, you want to know what your next project is before you're done with the current project. So I said to the guys, Dan and the other guys that were working with me, I said, who are we going to work with? And I said, we love Activision games. They're the best. Let's just call them. So I called the main number. This is the recruiting process that Activision went through.
He cold calls Activision's,
Yeah, the number that's on like the manual.
It's in the phone book.
So I called the number, I said, can I speak to somebody in product development? And I bounced between extensions until eventually I got a guy. He said, Tom Lopez, Vice President of Development. I said, hi, Tom. I said, I am in New Jersey and I write 2600 games. And he said, no, you don't. I said, well, I do. And he said, well, you don't, because only people who write 2600 games are people who worked for Atari and people who currently work for Activision. That's it. I said, all right. I said, I gotta go. I gotta finish Donkey Kong for Coleco. Hold on a minute. Hold on a minute. Where are you? I'm in New Jersey. I'll see you tomorrow. So he came and visited me, and no lawyers in the audience, are there? Or people who still have Coleco shares?
No.
I showed him what I was working on, which violated probably 28 different contracts.
Non-disclosure.
As the last thing I did is I showed him. I showed him what I was working on. I'm very proud of it. And he was duly impressed, and it was clear we were going to talk about making a deal. And as he was leaving, he stopped at the door, and he looked back, and he goes, by the way, if you worked for Activision, you would have figured out how to make those ramps slanted. Because
at the time they
At
were
the time, they were flat ramps.
Ah.
Flat ramp, fall. Because the Atari has a very famous hardware problem that you can't put one picture on the left side of the screen and a completely different picture on the right side of the screen. It doesn't have enough RAM to do that. You either have a duplicate, so the ramps are like this on the left and they're like this on the right. Well, that's not gonna work. Or a mirror image, where they're like this on the left and they're like this on the right. And that's it. So you can't do something like this because it's two unique screens.
But you can.
But
just
you can.
need a technique.
You can, but it's
If
tough.
you're motivated enough. So he said that and left, and of course what I did is rolled up my sleeve, took about 2 weeks, and made them slanted.
And you rewrote that whole screen.
I rewrote that whole kernel, we call it, figured out how to make them slanted, which was a miracle from God, even more impressive than parting the Red Sea.
Yes.
But me and Dave and Dan were probably the only 3 people in the world who knew what a miracle it was.
Yeah.
No one else cared. In fact, you will notice, we'll end Donkey Kong with this. You will notice that there's this guy online, this hacker guy, this homebrew guy that says, oh, look at my Donkey Kong. Oh, I did this Donkey Kong. And it's got a fabulous looking Kong. And it's wide. It's like really wide and it scrolls and it looks just like the arcade game.
Mhm.
Except it's flat ramp.
I didn't know that.
Sorry,
That's
Sonny.
true.
You slant those ramps, then let's talk. Can't be done. So anyway, that's Donkey Kong. Don't believe them when they say it. It's not true.
So the work that we do today, people ask us, you got modern development equipment and modern tools. Does it make it any easier? And the problem is we're still using a piece of hardware that's in your attic. Hopefully some of you brought it down from the attic to play our new games. And the hardware hasn't changed. And the hardware is unbelievably limiting. Every time you saw something new and unique come into an Atari 2600 game, it's because we spent months behind the scenes figuring out different ways to make the hardware jump through hoops. Near the end, when I was still at Atari, I was working on something that was very similar. It was, if you notice, the early games had 2 scores, and they were big blocky scores, left player and right player. Those were done with the blocky playfield object that Garry used for the Rams, as it turns out. But I created, while at Atari, the 6-digit score display. It actually had 6 high-resolution characters. And there was a technique that nobody could figure out how to do until I finally used another hardware trick within the 2600 made it work. And I was working on that. And I felt a presence behind me and turned around, and it was Jane Miner, now deceased, but the original creator of the Atari 2600 TIA chip, Television Interface Adapter, which is the hardware chip that does everything. And he was just sitting there shaking his head. And I asked him about it. He said, I had no idea that my chip could do what you're doing up there. And that's what we did every single day. We figured out ways to make his chip do things that he never intended it to do. And that's why you can see a character like the diver in Poseidon. I mean, it is insane what that diver, what I had to go through to make that diver look like that. And the locomotive in Casey, it's insane what we had to do to make those kinds of things happen. But that's what we do, is we figure out ways to use the hardware in a manner in which it was not intended. And sometimes I would create something, I'd create a new technique, and I'd get it up on the screen and I said, okay, look at this is really cool. Now how do I make a game out of it? So I don't even start with a game idea, I would start with some cool new technique that I'd come up with. And that's been the last 40 years of our lives.
Got a question?
It's kind of, you started talking about the hardware and stuff. What's it like for you guys now to see some modern day resurgence in retro gaming? And I mean, I can walk out now, you're making new games, new cartridges for an Atari in 2025.
What's the name of our company?
Audacity.
Audacity. Who else would have the Audacity? That's why it's called
To
Audacity.
see this kind of resurgence and opening up kind of these games that y'all made way back when to a whole new audience that, never experienced that.
It's lovely, surreal, wonderful.
Yes, it brings respect back to the single screen games of the past
Ours aren't single.
that were based on gameplay, not based on how much video you could jam into a CD-ROM. And obviously we love it.
Simple answer, the retro gaming enthusiasts tell us the games were more fun to play. I mean,
It's
Call
simple,
of Duty.
One joystick, one button.
Call of Duty, fine, it's an experience. Is it fun? The things that are out there now are not fun gameplay. We like to be able to give you an entertainment experience for, a few minutes, a couple hours at the most, or whatever. You don't need to read the manual, you should, but you probably don't need to. You can figure out everything as you go. It's just the way we made games back then was, in many cases, it was because the hardware was very simplistic and it was very hard to make anything even look. I mean, I did a slot machine game at Atari, and if you ever play that game on the Atari 2600, you'll see that right out of Vegas slot machines, there's bars. Well, those are easy graphically, right? Okay. The bell, I was able to make the bell. Otherwise, there's cactuses and cars and other things that I could draw.
Cherries.
Well, did I do cherries? don't think
I
so.
know you didn't do cherries,
No.
but there are cherries.
No. And at some point while I'm doing that, my manager at Atari comes over and he says, we've got an entire graphics art department. Why don't you have a couple of those gals come over and see what they can do to make your graphics look like real slot machine graphics? And so
Damn, what an idea.
Well, yeah, exactly. So they come over, and I said, okay, we should make cherries, we should make lemons, we should make oranges. If you remember the three-wheel slot machines back in those days, it's called the three-wheel Liberty. It had the bell, and then it had cherries and oranges, and some of them had sevens and whatever. And so I said, all right, do this for me. Here's the deal. You've got 8 bits. And color and graph paper like we do, and you can see what you can do with 8 bits. And monocolor at that point, because we hadn't figured out how to find the time to do color on each scan line and such. And they just looked at me like I had 2 heads. Because if you try to do a stem with cherries, you got a plus and a plus. And that's what it looks like. I mean, so we were always doing tricks to try to figure out. It's kind of like you don't say, what am I going to draw? You say, what can I make that people will recognize? And then I'm going to use that.
Mhm.
Even in the NES, we're doing A Boy and His Blob, and we bring in the artist. And he's a fabulous pixel artist. And we say, give us some objects. And he draw a bunch of objects. And if we can look at it and not have to be told what it is, we might use it.
Mhm.
So I do have the blob turn into a hummingbird because I was able to make a bird with flapping wings, and you can look at it and say, that's a bird. But so often, we'll actually show, even today, Garry will draw something on his new graphic tool and send it to us, and sometimes we have to say, okay, what is it?
Right. and if the other person can't say, I know what it is, and tell me, we don't use it.
We don't use.
Yeah.
Like Dan, will show me something. And actually, remember this exact scenario. Dan shows me something and he says, I like it. What do you think it is? And I go, it's a bouquet of flowers. And he says, no, it's a machine gun. And then you use the machine gun, right?
Didn't use it.
Anybody who has preschool children who draw pictures understand this. You wait to let them tell you what it is before you say, oh, that's a beautiful bouquet of flowers.
Right, that's exactly right.
So yeah, we would do this all the time.
Yes.
Make sure that whatever you do in this, you only got 8 pixels, do something that looks like. I mean,
And so there are some things that look great, and there
Well,
are some things that look terrible.
I mean-
no matter what you do, and then you take them out of the game design. Just get rid of them.
the
No.
alligators in Pitfall came out so good
Yep.
in 8 bits. The Scorpion, beautiful, gorgeous. But it wouldn't have been in there if you couldn't recognize what it was.
Right. You tried to do an armadillo. It was just
Yeah.
didn't have the same. You know, I thought of something completely random that has nothing to do with anything, but it's so funny. I have to say it. You know, we're trying to make hit games, obviously, but we're really just trying to make fun experiences. That's what we're doing. We're making fun games. They're not all going to be hits, right? You may do a game that's incredibly fun to you, or even to you and your coworkers, but it may not sell for squat, and who knows why? It's just the way the market works. So at one point, we brought money into one of our companies, and I was sitting with the geniuses that were putting the money in. And one was a Princeton grad, Harvard MBA, the other was Wharton School, and they're sitting there, and suddenly, since they're putting money in, suddenly they're
Game designers
smarter
too.
than
Now
me.
they're the expert.
They're smarter than
designers
me.
too.
So they say, they're asking me to explain the game industry, and I'm explaining it. And I said, really, if you look at it, in total, you will find historically that a company may put out 10 games. Let's just say, company puts out 10 games. You may have one hit out of those 10.
One mega hit.
Yeah.
What mega?
You may have a couple that make money, and they contribute, but 5, 6, 7 of those could be complete duds.
And what they said.
And what they said was, oh, whoa, wait a minute. And they sat there and they put their Ivy League heads together and talked a little bit.
And they said.
And they came back and said, well, but we have a question. Why don't you just do the ones that are going to be hits?
Why don't you just make them all hits?
Damn it, I didn't think of that.
Jeez,
I didn't go to MBA,
you're right.
Harvard, Princeton, whatever. So that was just popped my head. I just had to share
Well,
it. It's an enlightening moment.
the origin story of Activision. There's a lot online, you can read about it, but it was very similar to that. There were 4 of us who went to lunch together, kind of hung out together and helped each other with games, and we were kind of a clique in the company. And marketing sent out a memo one day that had the top 20 games of sales from the previous year. And it basically listed them by percentage of sales, not numbers, because they would never tell us how much money they were making off of our products, because we were making $20,000 a year salaries and doing these games for Atari. And basically, they sent this out because you see this list of games, do more of these and fewer of these,
Right, of course.
you know?
Right.
And as stupid as that is, it actually was the impetus for founding Activision, because we looked at them and we said, wait a minute, the 4 of us sitting there having lunch, you did that one, I did that one, and you did that one, and you did that one, and you did that one. And we were responsible for 60% of Atari sales, the 4 of us sitting there, in cartridge sales. And it was an open secret that Atari had made $100 million selling cartridges the previous year. So wait a minute, we made them $60 million and we're making $20,000 salaries. And about 3 months later, Activision was formed.
And the guy who sent the memo was fired, I'm sure.
Exactly.
Right.
But it's the same thing, the thinking of results oriented. You know, design the game that's going to be #1 hit. We do contract work occasionally. We've done it over the years. We've been in this business for 40 years. We've done a lot. And you know, one of Gary's comments is always, you know, the guys who did Angry Birds.
Yes.
Angry Birds.
They would not give that game to the contract. They would publish that themselves because they knew it was going to be the hit. You know, you can tell when you're playing a game, this is one we're going to keep. This crap we're going to give off to the other guys. You know? And it happens.
So that is an example of you that knew which one was going to be hit. Actually, Angry Birds is a tremendous life lesson in designing games. You sit down, the guys with the money tells you, come up with a great concept, show me a creative design document. You know, really beautiful pictures.
Can't tell you how many 200-page documents we've made.
Oh, God.
Yeah. And you will sign off on it. Well, this is great.
You're
That's-
gonna make it exactly like this.
Yeah, I'm gonna do it exactly like this. Well, Angry Birds. Angry Birds came up with a design document and started building it. And they built it. And it was done. It was done. They blessed it. It's done. But nobody liked it internally. So they changed it. And then they were done. They went through that process 57 times. Completely changed the game. And they couldn't get in. It was fun. And then one of the tester guys said, you remember version 43 where we had that bonus level where you pull the slingshot back, you knock down buildings? That was fun as all hell. And they said, you're right. And that's it. That's Angry Birds. Pull the
Make the
slingshot
entire
back.
game like that one little
Yeah,
bonus.
it was fun. It worked. Do it.
You
Ship
could
it.
have designed Angry Birds so they put you in a conference room for an hour, left you alone with a bag of rubber bands.
Yeah.
Because you would have eventually picked them up and started shooting all around. And that's fun. That's a game. And that's what they do.
But anybody who tells you they do a design document and the game comes out exactly the same,
No.
they are not telling the truth.
Well, they may be telling the truth with some of the big AAA games.
Well, yeah, that's true.
The reason the AAA
Yes.
games are also derivative is because somebody's going to spend $100 million making these games. And there's a Hollywood movie, The Players, where they're pitching all these movies and they say, it's Driving Miss Daisy with Bruce Willis. They try to explain a concept.
Or
by-
Driving Miss Davis combined with Die Hard.
Yeah, whatever.
Yes.
I said Bruce Davis, I meant
Yes.
You said Bruce Willis.
Thank you.
Bruce
Yes, Bruce Davis is another
Someone else.
evil
Never mind.
empire guy.
Never mind.
You said Bruce
Uh,
Willis. Go ahead.
Did I?
Yeah.
So anyway, that's what you have to do if you're going to pitch to an Activision who's going to spend $100 million on a game. You're going to say it's exactly the same as something else, but with a little change in graphics. That's why you've got
'Cause they know the other
Call of
thing's
Duty
sold.
2027 is coming
Yeah.
out this year, right?
I didn't tell you, by the way, about the new game we're going to do. I have this idea for a game.
Oh yeah.
We have 100 people on an island,
Mm-hmm.
and everybody tries to kill each other,
There you go.
and the last guy left is the winner.
Try to do that on the Atari.
I thought of it the other morning in the shower. It's going to be great.
So-
We're going to call it Pub A
Pub A,
for,
yes.
for Audacity.
Pub A.
Yes.
We
Survivor.
are digressing. I hope you're.
By the way, we pointed out before nobody reads manuals, we did a scientific test.
And you all failed.
And we proved it. We proved it. The last page of the Casey's Gold manual, Casey's Gold came out 2 years ago, year and a half
Came
ago.
out in November last year.
Last page of it is an entire page promoting Rescue from Poseidon's Gate. And it
Yeah.
explains what it is and how it is. It's David's next game. We've gone to 3 shows since then, before Poseidon's Gate launched 2 weeks ago. And what's your next game?
Nobody heard of it.
What's your next game? I said, well, we don't talk about games that aren't released. Oh, come on, give us some. I said, anybody read the manual? No. Open your manual. It's in there. Literally no one knew Poseidon's Gate existed, even though we put it in print and it was there for a year. Nobody looked at
So
it.
nobody reads manuals.
Nobody reads manuals.
But we still love doing it.
Yeah, we do.
Well, that's because the founding principle of Audacity Games was to recreate Christmas morning 1982. You open up this beautiful box and you open it up and it's got a label and manual and all this cool it's physical game. That's what we wanted to recapture. We've done games on the iPhone you could download from the App Store. iOS changes, you can't play our games anymore. They're gone forever. 2600, you plug it in, turn it on, it still runs. 40 years later, it still runs.
You still have to blow on the cartridge.
You do.
Occasionally.
You do.
Although
Yes.
the NES was much worse than
The NES was far worse.
All right, we're going to open it up for questions because we have maybe 10 minutes.
12 minutes left.
Go ahead.
Yeah, I'm an elementary teacher and I also have an 11-year-old, and I see a lot of my students teach their grade are gravitating towards Pong and very simple 8-bit games. I think that's kind of 2 questions in one. Why do you think that is? I have my own theories on that. And then the other one is, a lot of your talk today, you talked about, the guys in the suits versus the artists that you guys are, right? And in the comic book industry, we've had that same kind of shift where you know, you've had the people doing the grunt work who were the artists and loved the craft, and it was a passion project for them, and then you had the executives and that constant back and forth.
Yep.
And so, how has, like, do you feel that game designers in the current game industry are getting the credit that's due to them compared to back when you guys were there? Or is it still kind of that, we don't really care who made it, just get it out there, we need to sell it and move on to the next thing for our shareholders?
Well, I mean, I think that the dirty secret of the $1.4 billion video game industry is that all the innovation comes from indie gamers and from gamers themselves. I mean, have you thought about the fact that the last two creations of an entire genre of billion-dollar games, those last two innovations have come from game mods that individual gamers made? They invented the 100 people on an island. That was a game mod, and it turned into Fortnite, which is, you know, the biggest property in history. And before that, it was multiplayer online adventure games came out of Dota, Defense of the Ancients. And Dota, Defense of the Ancients, which launched League of Legends. Hello? Dota 2 from Valve. All those games came out of Defense of the Ancients. Defense of the Ancients was one guy. It was one guy who modded Warcraft 3. So here are the great innovations. Where are they coming from? They're coming from guys in their basement, or girls in their basement, doing mods, you know, and creating the next great games in the industry.
Well, the suit question, we solved the suit question.
We got rid of the suits.
Well, not only, we are the suits and the creatives, but we don't put out a game until we think it's done.
Yes.
We don't have anybody above us saying, okay, Christmas is coming. Casey's Gold, I finished a couple times, and they played it and said, it's not there yet. And I went back and retooled it, Hey, you know, you're on the train, you gotta get off the train, dude. Went back, put it in the towns, put it in this. So we are eliminating the suits, because we won't ship it until we know it's good.
But to answer your question, the innovation comes from indie game companies,
Yeah, individual.
which are small and don't have suits and make the right decisions, and the game community that mods and makes better games than the designers.
Yep.
And for the most part, all of the big game companies suffer the fate of some moron who wants to make quarterly numbers, deciding what games are being done and when they're finished.
Yeah, and then in our business, you know, the game didn't make expectations, the stock price didn't go up, we're gonna lay off the whole studio so that my stock price as the executive vice president or CEO, so that my stock price can go up 2 cents and Wall Street's happy, but yet you tanked the entire studio of creative people who rely on the paychecks and who love the craft.
And isn't it
It's a
so
terrible
weird?
industry.
Isn't it so weird that Dave started Activision? Part of the reason being that the creative people didn't get the credit that
Yeah.
Stephen King gets when he writes a book, or Steven Spielberg gets when he makes a movie. And now the industry has reverted all the way back to no credit.
It's a simple calculation. It's directly proportional. The amount of freedom and creativity is inversely proportional to the budgets.
That's right.
If you've got a $100 million budget, you can't go back to the studio and say, okay, you know that shoot-up game that was going to be a Call of Duty, it's now we're cultivating flowers, or whatever. You cannot be creative in high budgets, so we get it from the indie studio.
Right.
Your question of credits also has to do with the size of the project. The reason that we got credit at Activision was games on the 2600 were one-person jobs.
Yeah, like writing a
I
book.
mean, in Pitfall, I wrote every line of code, drew every pixel of art, did every sound effect, every aspect of the gameplay, tweaked how the player ran, how the player jumped, all that tweaking. I did all that, one person. And so I can put my name on a game, and if you see a game that says David Crane's Rescue from Poseidon's Gate, it's because I did all that stuff. Well, you got 1,000 people on a project. You're going to have rolling credits at the end of the game for an hour.
Yeah, but you're still gonna in most cases, you're gonna have one person who is the visionary.
I'm not
Who
even
drove
sure
it?
anymore that you get one
I don't know if
person.
you have that anymore,
It's-
you're right.
It's teams,
You're right. You
it's
may-
meetings, it's,
There was maybe in the first iteration.
Because it's no different than movies. And movies, you get Bob Zemeckis or Steven Spielberg,
Those are EP.
and you got 5,000 people working on those.
Yeah.
But you still have one guy driving it, making the decisions.
Either the director or the executive producer.
The director or the executive producer, yeah.
I don't know what you said kind of about it being like movies, but if you really think about it, AAA games are exactly like movies.
Oh, they are exactly like
It's
movies,
the
yeah.
same
They
setup.
are the
Look
movie
at-
model, you're right.
Yep.
GTA 6,
Yep.
a good terrible example. I mean, it's been delivered
Yep.
27 times now, for various reasons. But yeah, it's so that also kind of tunes in something else we were saying. I like what you say. You don't put out a game until it's ready. Do you see that as more of a trend in the industry now? I mean,
Yeah.
They shovel
Yes.
Call of Duty out
Yes.
every year, but something huge like GTA.
I mean, we are a unique situation. We have had, I mean, at least I speak for me, the three of us had more fun making games in this company than we've ever had in any other company.
Yeah.
Because we call our own shots. And we would never, if one of us called the other one and said, you know, we gotta generate some cash. Can you release that game in 3 weeks? The phone would hang up. I mean, we don't do that. When it's done and we love it and we're ready, we all know it. We don't have to tell each other.
but I don't know that it's a trend in the industry. Again, it's inversely proportional to budgets.
But it may be a trend in the indie industry.
It's a trend in the indie industry.
But if you've got somebody who's spending $100 million, they've got to get a return on investment.
They need a
They've
return
got
on
to.
investment, they need.
Yes, but if they were smart,
To make
the
it by
return on
certain-
investment they get is leave the creative people the hell alone and they will create something great.
But they can't
But
do
if
that.
you love those games, be sure to just buy them and pay full price, because Activision's not going to spend $100 million on another game if they don't make $200 million on the first one.
Yes.
You know, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
You had a question too?
Yeah, I just, if you reflect back then when you first started Activision, what was the biggest stretch that you had to do with the technology that you're the most proud of, if that makes sense?
I know what David's is.
Well, no, I mean, every game that we did, we were innovating every single day. Fortunately, the industry was in its infancy, so you had to do that, and so, you know, we were forced to do it. But, I mean, you could look at any one of the games that we did, and, I mean, I was just talking to somebody about the music in Pitfall 2. The music in Pitfall 2 was composed for the cartoon series. And when we licensed to the cartoon series to do Pitfall, we back licensed anything that they created, so we were able to use the music. And I did an arrangement for a piece of hardware that I created to put in Pitfall 2's chip. But then I also did a minor key arrangement. I do have some musical background, and I did a minor key arrangement of the song to for when you're dying. When you die, you play. It plays the theme song, you know, really, really sadly, right? And it occurred to me at one point that may have been the first time that music was used to convey emotion in a video game. So every single game that we did, there was something new that we were innovating and making happen. I don't know if there's any one thing, you know, it's every game,
It's
everything.
everything. I was referring to the Grand Prix
Well,
cars.
Grand Prix was a technology that, I mean,
If you look at the car and say, that's exactly what the tank was in combat, how the hell did he do it?
yeah.
It's just, but it's the same thing with incredible achievement to lead.
Well, and I'll give you mine, because I actually have one. It's the music in Pressure Cooker.
Yes, that's
It's
true.
the first time anybody figured out the light bulb. Duh. There's only 9 notes that are in tune on this machine. Only use those notes to make a song. Where if you try, how were there, 50, 30 or 50 tones? But
127 actually.
127 tones, only 9 of them match what you have to have something in tune. So I marked the Casio keyboard with the 9 notes, gave it to a professional composer, and said, write me a song for this game about a chef running around. The guy goes, wow, that's really cool, I could do that. I said, but you can only use those 9 notes that are marked. It's like, are you kidding me? But he did it, and it turned out great.
Now, in the same way, visually, people would put up an Activision game and an Atari game and say, why are your colors so much better? Because you may have 128 colors, but At Activision, we would taught, these are the only ones you use because they look good.
Yeah, don't use the
Don't use
puke
puce
purple.
and purple.
You don't need that in the game.
If you're gonna use a blue, this is the number, a red, a yellow, and so, like the audio, we made our games look better because we limited ourselves to best looking colors.
Thank you for the answers. I appreciate it.
Anything else?
I just want to ask you, is your experience now with the current company a lot like early days of Activision, or is it, what's the big differences between?
Well, I mean, Activision was the exception on this suit thing, because the four of us were the driving founders of Activision. We were the creative guys.
Not us.
No,
He and his three.
Bob,
Activision.
Al,
four
Larry,
co-founders, my four co-founders, but then we did not want to deal with business. And we got pretty fortunate. We found a guy who, he had worked in the record business, and so he knew how to market products, and he knew that there was creation, and that you had to actually give time for creation. And so we would have meetings, and he would not come to us and say, we need to have that game that you're working on done by, October 1st. He would say, I need to sell a game this Christmas. Of all the games you're working on, are any of them going to be ready?
Yeah.
And one of us would say, I will make sure that my game is done by October 1st. And so we agreed between us, between the creative people and the business people, that we would be able to support the business, because obviously we needed to sell games to pay the bills, to keep the lights on. So that's kind of an exception to the way it's done anywhere now, I think.
Yeah, and I agree with you. Tom Lopez, the guy who I had that original phone call with, was a very smart development executive because he didn't tell us how to
Yeah,
develop.
he knew how to manage creative people. They also never came to us and said, okay, now I need a driving game.
Yeah, and they
Now I
never,
need a submarine game.
as far as I know, Tom Lopez never played the games. He didn't play and go, this is too hard. It would be great if there was a frog on the screen. He didn't do that.
He let us do what we did.
Get away from us. Don't do that.
Yeah, leave the creative people
Yeah. So yes,
to be creative.
but that only lasted. That Nirvana lasted for a year or two, at least for me. Maybe longer for Dave. I think we're probably done, huh? We haven't been told so, but it's 1:30. Should we just keep going, or
Keep going.
should we wait for them to throw us out?
Yeah, let's do that.
The
All right. Any other
right there.
questions? Yes.
Go on up there.
Sorry, who? Yeah. Okay. The inspiration for your getting into the career you're in. What did you guys like? Hey, did you think? Hey, I want to do this. It was a pioneering time, right? It was
Yes.
very much
Yeah.
on the cusp of this revolution we had. And what were your ideologies? Or like, hey, I'm going to go do this as a career.
Well, you didn't make a decision to be a video game designer
Because there was no
in
career,
New
sure.
Jersey because I don't think you had any idea what the hell a video
industry
game
was
designer
like.
was. I remember being at a party when I first started working for Activision. I was at a party in New Jersey. I was talking to someone. This woman says to me, she goes, so what do you do? I said, well, I make video games. And she said, I thought computers made those.
Oh wow.
And now everybody says they do.
Yeah. 50 years later? Yeah. We just stumbled.
I'm having trouble with the connection.
Oh, fuck
Let's
off.
try again later.
We stumbled into it because I was in college for art. Dan said, I'm an artist. I was an art student. I was in college for art. And then one day I said to myself, how am I going to pay the mortgage? But that was another story. So I got offered a part-time job in a company. And they were what was called an engineering company. It was really only 4 people. And I joined them. Absolutely no, anticipation of what it was going to be. I just joined it. It was a job. It paid. And I was going to school for art. I was paying my own way to college, and I needed money. So I joined it, and it turned out they were doing very cutting-edge digital electronics stuff. Microprocessors were just hitting the consumer market. And before I know it, and they overpromised and underdelivered. So they would tell a client, we could have that done in a month, hang up the phone and go, anybody available to work on this?
Anybody know how to write code?
And then we did a project where we needed a coder, and the coder they hired flunked out. And they said, does anybody here know how to program? And I said, I could try. And I said, all right, great. Tell us
Give
what
it a shot.
Give it a shot. Tell us when you're done. And that was Wildfire. Is the pinball machine for Parker Brothers. So we stumbled into it. It was lucky.
Yeah.
Because then Dan, soon after, joined the
Followed
company
the
with
same
me.
company, yeah.
He ended up same company. And then we were doing electronics, and I said, you know, if you look west, some company out there is making a hell of a lot of money doing cartridges for that new Atari machine. Why don't we do that? So there was no documentation, so I went out and bought an Atari and ripped it open and reverse engineered it, figured out how it worked, told my boss I was going to do it, and he said, you're a fool, keep doing what you're doing. And then about 3 months later, he calls company meeting and says, I had a brilliant idea yesterday, we're going to go into the Atari business. Garry, you're in charge of that. Thank you, Jim. So that's how we get it.
Well, simple answer is everybody in the world has either left brain or right brain skills. And if you have left brain skills, you might become an artist and you do certain creative things. And if you're all right brain, you're going to be very technical and might be tearing open circuitry and fixing and that sort of thing. There is a subset that are strong in both, and you're looking at a group of them. To make Atari 2600 games is extremely technical, and to make them fun is extremely left brain. So we were a small group of people who could do both, and so we gravitated towards something that used both, which is highly technical things that are fun and creative. And you know, when we started at Atari, there were a handful of people, fewer than 50 people in the world that could do what we were doing. So it became obvious that we were in the right career, you know.
And I knew I had arrived.
Right.
There was a moment I knew I had arrived.
Right.
I moved into a new neighborhood. I just joined Activision, moved into a new neighborhood. Not a big fancy neighborhood, just a regular neighborhood. I was fairly newly married, and I hadn't met the neighbors much yet. And I rolled the garbage can down to the end of the driveway, and I'm standing there, and I look, and there's a kid. He's about 14 years old, and he goes, "Hey, I'm Josh. I'm the neighbor." And I shook his hand, and I said, "Hey, nice meeting you." And I go to walk away, and he goes, "Hey." I said, "Yeah." He said, "Do you know that you have the same name as a famous video game designer?"
Oh, wow.
I said, "No, I didn't know that." that was great. Very silly.
Anything else?
You got all your questions answered back there?
No, so you all were at Activision, David, you co-founded it. Why did you all leave Activision?
Oh!
We're gonna go back to that Bruce Davis name now. Oh, sorry.
The irony though, you left the company that was run by Suits, and the company that you, David, co-founded became Suits.
It became too Sooty.
Right. But why did you all leave?
Just to bring one little issue up, Kevin O'Connor had a 1:30 slot to speak. It's 1:35. I think you should respect.
Yes,
Absolutely.
I wish somebody would come tell us that.
For if you guys had questions, you could visit with him afterwards.
Yes.
Kevin's
Is
We
Kevin
are-
here?
Oh,
now he is here.
Yeah, beautiful.
Oh, we
Well,
didn't know
yes,
that. I'm
just
sorry.
tell us.
We were just
didn't
waiting
know.
for the next
There you go.
person to arrive.
Thank you for pointing that out. That is, that's what. So we are at the booth, right at the front of the show. You walk in with the first booth. We're gonna be there. We will sign autographs for free. We don't charge. Come look at our games. And if you have any more questions, come chat with us.
Sorry,
Thank
Kevin.